Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I just read The Hollow King by John French, and well, it's not very good. So the premise is this. We follow a powerful soul blight by the name of Kado. A while ago, a group of Tzeentch worshippers destroyed his kingdom and left him for dead with nothing to rule over but ashes. He then let a mysterious female vampire turn him so he could go and take revenge on these nerds, and yes, of course, we have absolutely no idea who this powerful female vampire could possibly be. In the book, the tracks of the cult lead him to Aventis, a city in Shaiish, but as he tries to locate the cultists, things soon get very complicated as both the Lumineth, the Realm Lords, and the Ossiarch Bone Reapers enter the stage. Will Kado be able to take his revenge? And will Aventis be able to survive? That is the story of this book. Now let's get started with the highlight of this novel, and that is the creative world building, or in other cases, the creative way John French interprets the lore of Age of Sigmar. Kado, for starters, has a set of rings that allow him to conjure up ghosts, to give him advice or to help him if he's in trouble. Quite a cool concept that is reminiscent of the personality course from the Twice Dead King books. I feel like more could have been done with it, but I still quite liked it, and the banter between the spirits was really nice. The Lumineth as well got an interesting portrayal that focuses a lot more on their darker side, namely the fact that in their zealous quest for control, they are willing to sacrifice anyone or anything that stands in their way. If they have to exterminate a city in horrible fashion in order to prevent the enemy from getting it, well, so be it. We already saw this shining through here and there in Godsbane, but I like how the story explored it a bit more. Then finally, the Night Haunt were also a dope addition to this book, and there's some really cool scenes involving a spirit torment, which is probably my favorite part of the novel. However, that is also where my praise for this book stops. For starters, the main character, Kado, is an absolutely insufferable edgelord. Don't get me wrong, I love me some edgy characters. Guys like Malus Darkblade, Comrade Curse, or Illidan Stormrage are some of my all-time favorite characters. Yes, I did play a Demon Hunter during Legion, yes, I do still go back to watch the video, and yes, that light bulb deserved everything she got. Back to the point, the reason for this is that there's so often more emotion and tragedy attached to these characters, which competent authors then explore throughout the story. We see how they became what they are today, and we see how these scars influence their emotions in the present. Stories with such characters are therefore also a lot more intimate with their main character. Think for an example of the Comrade Curse Primer book, where we learn much from his talks with the Emperor, or similarly from Malus, where we learn a lot from his conversations with Zarkhan. Because we get to see behind the mask, so to speak, the reader can actually understand the character and form an emotional connection with him. That's why even though Malus is an absolute asshole, we still want him to succeed in his quest, or why we feel happy when Illidan finally gets his redemption arc. Kado, however, gets none of this, and has the emotional depth of a kiddie pool. We get almost no meaningful insights into him during the first half of the novel, then halfway in the book we suddenly get a multi-chapter information dump about how he lost his kingdom. And I say info dump because here too we get no emotion from Kado whatsoever. It's almost as if he wakes up, sees his kingdom destroyed, and then just goes on a quest for vengeance because he has nothing better to do. Where's the rage, the anger, the grief that you would expect from a character like that? Well, not in this novel at least. Another thing authors sometimes do to morally grey characters or evil characters is to give them likable character quirks or to make them hyper competent in something. This way, you may hate their guts, but still as a reader, you might be amused with their cunning schemes or sassy remarks. But this too, French decided not to do for Kado. He's a complete idiot that gets fooled, manipulated and beaten by everyone with more than 5 brain cells. There are parts where you as the reader can think of 10 good ways to solve a scenario, but you can always count on Kado to pick exactly the worst thing to do. He's like Carl from the Walking Dead TV show, where you're basically just constantly frustrated at how stupid his course of action is. This too could form a funny plot element, like for example in Court of the Blind King. The main character there is also quite a retard, but this forms a core element of the book. Throughout the book he comes to terms with this and tries to improve himself. Not to mention that it's often used for great comedic effect. Not on the Hollow King though, no, Kado just keeps on jumping down cliffs being wholly convinced that he himself is a genius. Kado is also just a straight up arsehole. Like at one point in the novel, he gets another guy in trouble, and they're forced to do something very dangerous. Now this mortal is obviously very scared and starts praying. Rather than being reassuring, Kado literally walks up to the guy, tells him his gods don't care and that hope is for losers. Like, bro, you're supposed to be a king, yet your understanding of morale is completely absent apparently. Also, what in the Emperor's name are you getting out of this? You're just being a dick. Then for a final point about Cato, French is also completely inconsistent with him. In one scene he is written like an immortal god wizard who can summon literal armies on a whim, equipped with an arsenal of unholy magical relics. But then during the next scene, he struggles to fight off just a random mortal with a knife. Like, same for his intelligence. During some points, he literally needs his ghost to explain the most basic stuff to him, and during others, he's some sort of Dr. House level genius. Or what about his morals? During some scenes, he's just a bad guy for the sake of it, and during others, he randomly goes out of his way to be like extra good and special. Like, what is he supposed to be, French? Outside of bipolar, of course. Needless to say, I found myself very unable to care for Cato in this book. In fact, I was more rooting for him to actually lose, as that would have been a lot more satisfying. Okay, enough about the main character, but there is more, because the writing style as well left much to be desired, because this is Mortis all over again. So many incomprehensible, confusing and emotionless fight scenes. French has also decided that they had to be gender neutral now as well, so you get paragraphs that are just great. Like, they charged him straight on. They parried the blade just in time. The horse rider tried to retaliate, but they missed. They saw their opportunity and hacked off the Bone Reaper's skull. Like, what the fuck is this? Elementary school? We don't get any names, we don't get any descriptions, every sentence starts with the same word, there are no descriptions whatsoever, and the entire ordeal still manages to be confusing. Also, why do we get action scenes between characters that are not introduced and that we know nothing about? Like, we don't know their name, we don't know their gender, we don't know what they look like, and if you haven't read, like, the codex of the faction they're from, you would have no clue what the hell's going on. Meanwhile, at other points, the book doesn't know where to stop providing cookie-cutter information. There are so many out-of-place exposition dumps in this book, it's ridiculous. Like, two characters will be in the middle of a fight just for one to stop and explain how the MacGuffin works. Or the middle of the book where we just out of the blue get a multi-chapter backstory. Again, in a good book, these pieces of information are tied in organically into the plot, or in the case of a backstory, you might have the character tell it, so that we can also hear their thoughts and those of the people they tell the backstory to. But what's more, this book decided to not go for that route. Then finally, the ending was also just a big tie together of Deus Ex Machinas and just as planned TMs. But as always, I won't spoiler what it is, just don't expect it to be very good. Oh, and of course, there's another big name drop at the end, because every garbage Age of Sigmar book nowadays seems to do this. All in all, I'm giving this one 1 out of 5 My Chemical Romance vampires. The main character is insufferable to read about, and the plot is a mess. French's writing style always seems to be a coin flip between awe-inducing and awful, and sadly this time the coin landed on the bad side. Sure, there is some nice gothic world building, but Annandale, Werner, Stevens and Reynolds have done the same thing but better. So if you want a cool gothic book, I highly recommend picking anything by them and just skipping this piece of shit. Anyways, that was all I got for you today. The book's linked down below for whatever reason. And don't forget your daily prayers to the Ruinous Powers.